the main focus today. It's going to be talking about how does Dynamics D365 for government contractors by Turnkey Technologies actually can help your company to increase the level of efficiency when we talk about Defense Contract Auditing Agency, right? So today we will be focusing basically on mainly the accounting requirements, right? Which is where at the end of the day everything is going to take place. Then we go to reporting. But if we don't have the accounting requirements, well, then we're going to be having a lot of rework and a lot of reclassifications, a lot of recalculations that are going to put a lot of burden on our monthly invoicing process, right? Which at the end of the day, it's what we want to make more agile as a company when we are developing projects for our defense for the defense agency. So as part of what accounting requirements mean, you can see a list of what we're going to be talking about today. But basically, there are going to be kind of two main focusings, and those two main topics actually has a lot of uh, a lot of concepts inside of it, right? So we can start saying, okay, so how we could manage cost reimbursable and cost fee projects or cost reimbursable plus fee projects for the government, right? That is going to take us to how are we going to be managing our cost pools, which at the end of the day can be translated to, okay, I need to make or I need to be able to manage allowable and unallowable type of work. I need to make sure that I can comply with percentages of my pools, right? And those percentages can need to be kind of dynamic, right? I cannot have the same percentage for fringe from one year to another, or even in the same year. I can have a contract with a specific percentage of fringe, a different percentage of overhead, G&A, right? So basically how the system can give us that functionality. Other of the basic things that we need to make sure we comply and we have pretty much segregated when we talk about DCAA requirements. It's a segregation of the direct and the indirect cost, right? It needs to be pretty clear what it's part of fringe, what it's part of my daily rates, what's part of um, my expenditures, my costing, what is direct, what is indirect. How do we manage all these costs by cleans, right? So how are we going to manage our contract lines? How are we going to manage our task level, which is, yes, inside a clean you can have multiple tasks, right? And every task will have certain activities or certain type of works that are going to be allowable for indirect costs on our on our customer, on our contracts. So other thing that we're going to be looking at today is how do we ensure that we have an auditable timekeeping system and expense recording system, right? That is also basic, is we need to make sure that we have audit trails for our time entering. How can the system let me know how many timesheets do I have in the current period? How many expenses do I have pending to attach to an expense report, right? So providing at the end of the day, every time we post a timesheet, providing real-time costing regarding the cost of those hours that we are doing. And here we get into the concept of how we are actually allocating if I am a salary employee, how the system can ensure that if I work 50 hours a week on a contract, I won't be charging my regular kind of ERP calculation, right, which is number of hours times or the cost of the hour times number of hours. No, we need to be able to dilute my cost for my customer, for the government. And that's another capability we will be talking about today. So as part of all this, well, we're going to be actually, then I will be showing you how does a work breakdown structure and a planning process work for your projects, because that is basic, right? If we don't have a work breakdown structure, there's no going to be a way to manage our cost at a task level, right? How do we manage budget and forecasting? Also, as part of our defense contracts, I'm pretty sure that some of your claims are going to be cost reimbursable or or cost plus fee, right? But there are some other claims that are actually going to be time and materials or fixed price projects, right? So how we could manage sub projects for a contract so we can have the visibility overall independently of how or what is the behavior of each one of these claims. Right, so that's kind of what we're going to be focusing today. So in here you have kind of all that I said in a list. Okay, basically, first part of this demo, or I'm sorry, for this webinar, it's going to be PowerPoint, so no more than 7 slides, okay? And then we're going to be jumping all the way across to the to the tool and solution. So first thing that I want to show you in here is, yeah, we as part of our government contractor solution, we added in here a checkbox that it's going to allow us to know if these projects are going to be working as a cost plus, as a cost reimbursable project, right? So if we have any kind of these types of projects, we need to make sure we enable this functionality at the top level of the project or at the sub-project level. So it really allow us to go to the deep level of our claims, right? One important thing as part of the setup, it's the labor rates management, right? As I told you, almost a lot or majority of the ERPs, the way they work is it's pretty simple. Is you have an employee and this is your salary per or this is the cost per hour, and whenever you modify and whenever you work 10 hours, it's just going to be a multiplication of it, right? But in here, at least for our government contractors, we have different things, right? We have OCONUS activities, we have CONUS activities. The CONUS activities can be divided into salary activities, right? Or regular activities, so to speak, but also can have daily rates. There could be some of our expertise can be focused on daily rates with the government. OCONUS, usually it's a daily rate, right? So if I go and perform an OCONUS activity of surveillance for the for the defense, for DOD in another country, okay, I'm not going to be charging those by the hours. Those kind of activities usually are charged by day. So in here, what we did as part of our IP, as part of this government contract solution, is we have a way to identify if we have a cost hourly, because also I can have hourly employees, I can have daily rates, I can have weekly rates or bi-weekly rates. Weekly and bi-weekly are more for my salary employees, right? A salary employee cannot be ever an hourly or cannot have an hourly rate, but it could have a daily rate. I can have someone on my payroll, right, that it's able to perform OCONUS activities, and because he needs to travel, well, that's going to be a day rate, right? The important thing, as you see at the very bottom, is that all these rates can be done at as general or as specific as you need. For example, for quotations, probably I just need to have a client, right? These rates apply for client or by client. Okay, no, I need to be more specific on a bid. I want to do it at a client plus a category. I still don't have a resource, right? So I can put a general resource, right? But I can say this activity or this category for this customer, this is going to be the cost that I will be managing, right? My sales pricing. Okay, so my offer has the same way to work. My offer, I can say for bids, I can use this level, but for my real project, once that I have it, okay, I can transfer it and I can keep it using it, or I can change it as well by contract or by project ID. So we have a pretty good segregation of our costing and our sales price. Okay, so basically this is kind of an insight of how we set up rates for labor, and the same thing applies for expenses in here. And the other topic that we will be talking about a lot is the segregation of indirect and direct cost, right? So we in D365 Finance and Operations, we manage pretty much the concept of a category. because it needs to be easy for the operation to define what they are working with, right? We don't want to have a pilot selecting a main account regarding the activity that they are doing, right? We don't want an engineer, a technician selecting a main account whenever they perform an expense report or whenever they perform a timesheet or whenever they use a product as part of what we are doing, right? We want them to select a category, what type of work I am doing. Based on that selection, the system can identify th- two main or three main things is one, the type of transaction that we are talking about. Is this an hour? Is this an item? Is this an expense? Second, if it's an hour, what type of payroll we are talking about? This is regular rate. This is daily rate. This is hourly rate, right? And the third one, and most important, is this concept an indirect cost component, yes or no? If it is, then it's going to be calculated as part of my cost pool. This is how we segregate our indirect and allowable and unallowable concepts based on my hierarchy. Okay, so in this scenario, it says that the item fee is actually subject to my indirect cost component, right? So we have a way to manage CONUS and how CONUS Direct works. We connect automatically, talking about expenses, to the GSA rates for per diems and and lodge rates for the CONUS. We know that in every single state, in every city, and even by county, we can have different of allow rates, right, by the government for per diems and for lodging, right? So basically, we can and we are actually connected to the GSA database. So whenever we do an expense report, I want to do a per diem because I know that I will be traveling next week. I need to do a travel requisition. I'm going to go and click create per diem from this date to this date where I'm going to be in every single of these dates by zip code, and the system will retrieve back the approved rate on this year for the GSA. So we don't have the need to make any kind of correction by the end of the day. So direct and indirect cost by contract. So that it's as well, it's something that we can manage by project, and I'm going to go deeper about this topic in the ERP. Um, and basically how we could calculate different cost pools, right? Different rates. So you can see in this example, I have percentages, 15% out of, or it's for fringe, 8.25 for G&A, right? 30% for overhead. Those are my percentages across this date or as of this date, okay? And on the top section, you can see how I will be calculating those because again, is how do we calculate fringe? Okay, fringe is just going to be against the base amount. So if my cost is 100, I will have 15% for fringe based on those 100. But then my G&A it's not going to be based on my 100, right? It's not going to be based on my on my base amount. It will be based on top of base amount plus fringe, right? And then probably the final one is going to be my overhead is going to be based on base amount plus fringe plus overhead. And there is a way to set this up, right? At the end of the day, you define how do you want to, how many levels do you want to calculate in Cascade, right? Or if you want everything to be against the base amount, okay, we can do it. It's not how the normal calculation gets performed, but it is doable, fully doable. So, and finally, the last part of this presentation is the timesheet capabilities, right? So I'm just showing you how a user or a timesheet for a user will look into the ERP user interface. Of course, we can perform this activity via cell phone with a mobile app on a tablet. So whatever you have connectivity, you can go and create your timesheet. There is a mobile app available in App Store. So basically, you select what project you are working, what is the activity, right, that you are working with, which is basically our task, okay? What type of labor cost it is. Is this a regular rate? So that means it's my salary, or is this a day rate, right? So at the end of the day, behind the scenes, and I will show you it in the system is calculating how much money you should receive, as an employee based on the time that you are entering, okay? And this is just tying against the setup of the costing that we saw in a previous page. Okay, so those are going to be kind of the focusings today. As well, I will be showing you that the project management and accounting module, where is basically all the landing space where all these government contractor IP has been included. The project management and accounting system is going to help us to manage our fixed price projects, our T&M projects, our investment projects. I don't know how many of you do have kind of R&D projects as well, right? Before you start offering services regarding any specific product that you are developing. So how we could manage R&D. So all your different projects at the end of the day can be managed under the same umbrella, which is the project management and accounting module inside D365 Finance and Operations. And we're also going to be talking about the voucherings. I will be showing you some of the vouchers that will be generated. That being said, let me just end this slideshow and allow me please to go to my D365 environment. Okay, so whenever I log in to D365, for example, we know this is a cloud-hosted solution, right? So if I go to my website, I have my URL, system will start logging me in, right? I'm as a user, my first screen or the first screen that I can see, right, is actually what we call a workspace. This workspace gives me kind of an idea of what do I need to do today, right? What it's pending for me to approve, what it's pending for me to review. So it's kind of giving me insights. How many, for example, right now I'm saying, hey, you have 119 unattached expenses. How do I know that? Or how does the system know that? Okay, based on the import of credit card transactions, right? That I probably have a credit card, a company credit card. So there are 119 records that I haven't reported in an expense report. Okay, so I'm running out. I have a lot of unattached expenses. How many unattached receipts do I have? That means that I'm on the field, right? I'm taking a picture with my expense app, okay? And that's all that I have time to do today, right? So the system is reading that there is one picture that has not been associated to an expense report. And at the end of the day, that expense report can be linked to a project, okay, that it's actually related to a specific contract, right? And can be T&M, fixed price, or cost reimbursable, right? So basically we know and we have as an employee right away the visibility of what we are missing. My timesheets, right? Timesheets for my current period, right? I have a timesheet in the status of draft for 80 hours. You can see the different statuses. It's like, okay, I haven't submit my timesheet. It's in draft. I submit my timesheet, but it has not been approved. The status will be in review. Oh, my timesheet has been approved. It's going to change to the approved. Hey, someone returned my timesheet. Okay, I will have it in here on this bucket. So at a glance, I can see what is the different statuses of my timesheets. Hey, I don't have anything on this period. How it comes, right? I need to create my timesheet. And there is another way to send kind of daily alerts in order to let me know that I haven't done my timesheet yet. But at a glance, this is the way we can see it. Okay, so this is my first screen. It's pretty useful because I can also add in here my main links, right? And travel to several other places without any problem. So for example, I want to go and see the detail of these 80 hours. I'm just going to click on it, right? And it's going to take me to my timesheet number. Okay, so I will come back to the timesheets in a little bit, but that's the first part that I want to show you is my workspace and how the system can let me know what I am what do I need to perform today? I'm going to go and I'm going to show you first the first concept, which is I'm a project manager. I'm managing projects, or I'm a project controller, right? I'm the one in charge of the accounting of a project. So I'm going to go to one of the areas in the system that it's called My Projects. Okay. In this scenario, I can see that I have three main projects assigned to me, right? But this is my top level. I want to see every single clean that I do have under these projects. Okay, so project 87, right? I have two cleans. One clean that it's actually going to be a training fixed price project, right? And I have another clean that it's going to be cost reimbursable. Okay, so this shows us how we could manage the one top project, right? For example, project 40, and then I have 4 cleans inside the project 40. These are called sub-projects, and every single one of these sub-projects can be or can have a different nature. One can be cost reimbursable, another can be cost plus, another can be fixed price, another can be time and material, another can be investment, right? So that way we can organize our projects and actually roll them up to a top level project. That's the concept. Okay, so let me focus right now on this one by cost reimbursable. If I click on this ID, the system will provide me more detail of this project. Okay, one of the things that you see is it's a cost plus project. Perfect. It is a cost plus project. So that means that on top of this one, we will have probably fringe, G&A, I don't know, but several things depending on what I will be setting up, right? Other important thing is my project contract. One project contract can have multiple projects and multiple cleans inside it, right? We know that it's not a one-to-one relation, right? It doesn't usually work like that. One contract can have multiple cleans. Okay, so we have the ability to do that. If you see in this screen, this same contract, it's applying to the entire project, right? To all the cleans. Same thing, we can have a different clean or one clean with a different project contract ID. Why? Because probably it was a change order and that is going to fall under a different contract. Perfect. We can do a change. Not all the projects or sub-projects need to be attached to the same contract, but if you do have them seen those way, well, that's how F&O or D365 Finance and Operations all already work. What is the important thing on a project contract, right? Usually we can define more than one funding sources, right? In this scenario is we can have one or multiple funding sources. Okay, that's the first concept of a contract. If we have, independently, if we have one or multiple funding sources, what are going to be our funding limits, right? How much money is going to be allocated to project 8701? How much money is going to be allocated to 8702 from my customer point of view? What's my customer funding limit? I cannot bill them more than $50,000, right? And I already billed them $9,000 and I have 355 committed, right? So I can have a visibility right away of what is the status of my contract. How much money do I have as a limit from my customer point of view? How much money I already invoiced to them, right? That's it. That's what we call funding limits. We need to have milestones. Perfect. So then we actually create billing rules, right? Is our milestone going to be based on a percentage of completion? Is our milestone going to be based on dates and kind of big events, right? It's our billing rule going to go against that delivery if we are delivering kind of I don't know, it's items and materials to the Department of Defense, right? So it's like depends on what type of milestone do you have, you can create billing rules. Okay, so this is kind of the big concept of a contract. Okay, besides the part of the sales price, right? So yeah, we can have a sales price definitely, but besides that, there is other kind of things to talk about, such as the limits, such as the rules, such as funding sources and milestones. Okay, so this is basically the concept of a contract. So let's go back to my project, okay, and let's go to the next step, which I was telling you is before we start talking about cost pools, how do we structure a project in D365? We need to have tasks. Okay, so how do we manage tasks? Every project inside D365 Finance and Operations can be or can have what we call a work breakdown structure, which is not other thing than the planning of a project, right? How many activities I will have. I can expand these or collapse. I want to see level 1. This is my level 1, right? These are all my main activities, okay? Number of hours in efforts, dates when it's supposed to be happening, which is going to allow us to know what is the cost of the resources across these dates. If I go and hit expand all, I will be able to see, okay, underneath this activity, I can have different activities, right? An A&P lead or a pilot or an engineer, and every single one of these is associated to a category. And a category, as I told you, was the type of work that we are going to be doing. This is a regular, this is not an indirect cost component, right? And this is basically regular payroll, okay? But if I go to another one, which is probably a no-conus category, okay, this is going to change. This is a day rate, okay? So that being said, we can have all this stuff in here. The important thing is I have this as a scheduling, but I also do have this as a cost estimate, right? And I have a total cost price of this. This is my total cost price calculated based on my setups, right? And this is going to be my total sales price calculated based on my setups. This is a cost reimbursable, right? So I will have more invoicing. Why? Because, yeah, I am applying a fringe, I'm applying an overhead, and I'm applying a G&A to all these concepts, right? And we can add as many lines here for the forecasted cost as we need per activity. Okay, that is going to give us what? Our budget and our forecast. If I go here to my project budget, all that I did as part of my structure can be transferred to this, right? So I have my budget in here, and I have in here my my revenue expected. Okay, and now we can control budgets, right, across a project. Of course, all these budgets are subject to a workflow, to an approval workflow. If I go to the history, and this is part of the audit trails that we need to have, right, is who approved this, right? So we have that this budget was submitted by this user, Turnkey Technologies, right? And it was due by 6/17 at that time based on my policy. And then basically it was approved, right? Who approved it? It was a proven action taken by Turnkey Technologies. In this scenario, since I don't want to have anybody else working on my database, I approve it by myself, right? We know that in the real world, that's something that we turn off, which is avoid approval of the same person that it's submitting, right? But for the webinar purposes, that's how I did, right? So you do have a way to track who performed certain approvals. Okay, so now that we saw kind of the generals of my projects or of the projects, I'm going to jump in and show you the first component of this is indirect cost components. I'm sorry, it's going to be the, I'm going to go to my favorites. Indirect cost components group assignment rules, okay? How do I show you basically that the project 87.02 is going to be a cost reimbursable. Okay, perfect. So in here you can see that I have an effective date. As of this date, this project, it's a cost reimbursable, right? As of this date, instead being a project ID, I could say all this project contract ID, everything that falls under this project contract ID, it's going to be a cost reimbursable, right? So basically, we have the ability to say, hey, only these categories are going to be cost reimbursable. That's other way that we have to manage allowable and unallowable cost, okay? So specifying these categories under this project are going to be cost reimbursable. Perfect. The system will calculate indirect cost only on top of those categories, right? In this scenario, what I'm saying is everything that we post against this project, it's going to be subject to indirect cost. That's how I can leave it open as it is, right? So everything that I'm posting to that project, it's by definition allowable, right? So if I want to make them specifics, I need to use the combination category against project and make it more specific and saying, okay, so these categories are allowable and the ones that I'm not listed by default are going to be unallowable categories. That's how we segregate it. Now, what is included under this CR pool, right? This is my general cost reimbursable pool. Perfect. Can I have multiple pools? The answer is yes. I have the general cost plus fee, right? And I have the CP and I have the CR, right? Those are my two big pools. Let's take a look at the cost reimbursable. If I go to this button, I will be able to see what I am associated to it. Fringe, G&A for hours, overhead for hours, G&A for expenses, right? Because again, this not only applies for hours, it applies for hours, expenses, and products, right? So whatever transaction you do, you can say, hey, this is G&A for products. If I make a consumption of a certain type of equipment, right? Because it's part of my contract, okay, so that is going to take a G&A, right? If I define so. So I have here the percentages. Important thing is how I will be actually compounding my rules. You see fringe, as I told you, it's on top of a base amount. On top of the base cost of my hour transaction, I will calculate the 15% of fringe. My overhead, it's going to be calculated based on the amount of the result of the calculation of the base amount plus the fringe, right? So in the example I was telling you, $100 base cost plus 15% fringe, right? The overhead is going to be calculated on top of $115, right? And G&A, it's going to be based on base amount plus overhead plus fringe. So it's going to be, again, another deeper level. Okay, so you have the ability to say, hey, no, G&A is not going to be calculated by fringe, you just take it out, right? So it's going to be base amount plus overhead. So you have a way to make this dynamic, as dynamic as you need, right? So that's the concept of how we create our pools. Okay, every pool can have different indirect components, right? Probably you have a pool where you say, hey, I'm just going to charge fringe, G&A, and overhead for labor. I'm going to take out everything for expenses. Expenses is not going to be chargeable or allowable, right? Expenses or items are not going to be allowable for my cost pool calculation. Perfect. Take out these two lines. You just hit the delete button or you create a new one and basically you go, you don't charge them, right? Or put your invoice rate at 0%, whatever it works. So if I can go here and model my rate, I will say if my cost is 100, right, I will have a fringe of $15, I will have a G&A for 12.33, and I will have an overhead of 34.50, right? That's basically what's going to work, or how this is going to work. So for every $100 that I charge with all this combination, I will be charging $78.33 as part of indirect costings. Okay, that's how our pools and that's how this part of the solution works. So that's the first thing I wanted to show is how do we segregate and put allowable and unallowable categories? How would we define our costing pools, right? Now, what I will do is I will show you kind of the application of it. So I'm going to my timesheets, right? So I'm going to go back to this one, right? And I'm going to make a click on the timesheets on my current period. Let me just go back to my timesheets in here, project management and accounting. I'm going to go to all timesheets, right? I have permissions to do this. So I was working on this 4051, right? let's take a look at this timesheet. I'm the owner of this timesheet. I'm saying I'm working on this project, right? This is my activity number, and I'm actually going to delete this line, for example, for the day rates, and I'm going to retype it so you can see it. So I'm going to hit a new line, right? And I'm going to say, what are the list of projects that I am working with? So I have probably 1,000 projects right now into my system, but I just see in here the projects where I am assigned to. Okay, so that allows me to do that. What is my activity? Okay, my activity in this scenario is going to be an OCONUS AP lead. So I can see this as a tree view, right? So I can say, yep, this is the activity. This is what I am doing. It's easy for me to identify it. So this actually populates in automatic the category for me. So I'm not even selecting the category. This is a day rate. So let's say I'm going to do 15 hours in here and 15 hours on Sunday, right? And you can see how this one is my regular rate. It says 10 hours. I worked a lot, right? This week I work a lot, but how much, what's going to be the real cost of these transactions? If I go here and I hit the header button and I hit update totals, I will be receiving $2,700 for regular rate, which is my salary employee. As an employee, this is my salary. And why do I have this? It's because I work 5 days as a regular employee, but I also work 2 days, right? 30 hours at 30 hours for 1,300. So this means that my daily rate is $650. If I change this quantity, right, the regular ERPs or normally the behavior of an ERP is to say, okay, 20 hours, you should be receiving more money, right, in theory. But if I come here and I hit the update totals, this is not going to move, but the hours are increasing. So now I can have a way to say to my to the Department of Defense, hey, I work 40 hours, right? This guy spent 20 hours on Saturday and Sunday, right? But his rate is 650. So he really does. They really doesn't care how many hours I work. It's just about the daily rate that I'm envisioning and that I'm having, right? That's what they worry about. So at the end of the day, I can have this, and I can, at the end, it's my responsibility as an employee is to hit workflow, submit, right? So I can come and hit submit. I can hit submit. Of course, you are seeing here a timesheet where I have no restrictions of hours, right? But if in your case you do have a kind of maximum number of hours that worker can report in every other week or biweekly, depending what is your timesheet period, that's something that we can do. So you see the status of my my timesheet is in review, right? So the status of my timesheet is in review. I'm just going to wait and see if I have, for example, I am the one that I'm going to approve today, right? I can come and say, hey, you know what, I want to approve, I want to return, I want to delegate, or I want just to stop the workflow. I'm going to say approve the timesheet. Okay, so I'm going to approve this timesheet. I can put a comment in here. That comment is going to be visible for our trails, right? And at some point of this status will change from in review to approved, and then based on my setup, it's going to be automatically posted. So no one needs to come and say, okay, let's take a look at the approved timesheets and now post them, right? So let me just see. In the meantime, let's take a look at this one. Well, this change is the 4051. If I go once a timesheet is posted, what it does is the following. You have an hour transactions, right? These are all the hours that you do have. This is a 650 for 10 hours, right? This is my daily or my regular salary. And in here, what I can do is, okay, so show me for this transaction, what is the indirect cost that were calculated, right? So it's 650, and we remember that we have fringe and other things, right? So by clicking here, I can say, hey, review the indirect costs. So for these $650, the system is charging $975, right? It's charging, as at the 15%, it's charging $8 in here. It's not charging anything related expenses because this is not an expense transaction, right? This is an hours transaction. And I have $22 for overhead. So what is going to happen at the time we generate the invoice from the system, D365 F&O will tell you, hey, you need to charge these amounts. That is going to appear on your invoice. You are going to send that to your customer. And whenever your customer or the Department of Defense says, hey, you are charging me all these hours, all these indirect costs, show me the timesheets. I'm just going to the timesheet, right? And I'm showing you that from this point of view. So it already changed to posted. I think it was, let me just go here and I will go to my timesheets, right? I want to see these 90 are posted. This is the one that I was working with. And same thing, if I go timesheet, our transactions, I have the 20 hours for 650, right? I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, let your updates. Reviewing direct costing. There we go, right? So we have this calculation behind the scenes, okay? So this is how we calculate that on top of timesheets. Just going to be fast here, and I will show you expense reports, right? If I go to the view my reports, I will be able to see same thing. How many of my reports are in draft? How many are approved? How many are processed for payments? This is really important for our employees. We have a lot of traveling employees, right? So let me go to this $150. What do I have here is what type of invoice, what project ID is this related? Hey, I'm going to attach my existing reports because I just had a chance to took the picture with my mobile app, but didn't have a chance to attach it. I'm going to take it in here. I'm going to hit OK. So I'm attaching the report, right? I can specify the number of guests, right? Because we know that there also can be some kind of policies around it. I'm going to open in here my invoice, right? And probably I'm uploading this as an invoice, right? So that's all that you can do. So storage of documentation is here. This is going to stay here forever, right? As long as this record exists, right? And basically we do have a transaction amount and we are saying that we pay by credit card, okay? So it's a cost reimbursable stuff. So I'm going to submit my expense report, right? So that's how it works. This amount, it's going to be part of the committed cost of your project, okay? If I go to my projects right now and I take a look, for example, hey, I want to see where all the entire transactions that were posted against the project. I'm on the project, I hit posted transactions, and all the records that I've been posting are going to appear here. So you see these ones. You see this $540 dollars. Those are based on my cost dilution rate, right? The add up of this is going to make 2,700 as it was specified on the timesheet, but the system is right now allocating it by day, right? So if I go here and I take a look at the same thing, it's the ledger updates, I will have my indirect costing in here, 81, 66, 186. Right? So that's basically what I am charging as part of my indirect costings. Now let's take a look at how an indirect cost looks for an expense. I have here expense type, right? I report $100 for expenses. That calculates $8.25 for my expense G&A because it was defined as 8.25% on my cost pool. Right? So every single thing that I actually do in this project can be subject to a cost reimbursable stuff. So whenever your customers come and ask you, where are you getting these numbers? You have your posted transactions and you can go all the way back to the original transaction that generates this record. This is a product. As I told you, this works for manufacturing, for distribution, for services, right? So you're consuming products that you need to charge G&A, perfect. $123 for G&A, right? And you have the relation, okay, this amount is calculated based on what? Oh, based on transaction 193. Okay, which one is transaction 193? Probably I don't have that field in here. Oh, yeah, it's in here. Oh, this is 193. So this calculation was based on this line. Good. So these two are matching. This calculation goes against this line. This calculation goes against this line, right? And that's how we trace it. Finally, if I want to go here, for example, to my let's do this, and let's say I want to invoice. So how difficult it's to invoice in D365 F&O? We have two options. First option, and I'm just going to demonstrate probably today by this way, is I'm selecting my project, right? And I have something that it's called invoice proposals. This is an important thing. It's like, hey, you know what? It's my invoice proposal. I can tell the system, tell me what do I need to invoice at the 87 project level. Right now, I don't want that. I just want at the 8702 level. I just want this clean to be invoiced, right? So what the system is throwing, as you can see, are all the transactions that we already reviewed. Okay, that I already show in the other screen. These are my expenses, these are G&As. These are my expenses, these are G&As. Okay, so I'm good with this. I'm going to select everything, right? The total amount is going to be $14,000, right? And I can come here, for example, in these ones, and I can say review indirect components. How much money of this is going to be? Oh, this is indirect, right? So I have a base cost and I have indirect components. So you have the segregation at the time of the invoicing between G&As and cost pool components, right, at every single level. You have it when you record the transaction. Now you are having it when you are invoicing. So basically you hit the OK button, right? And at this point, you are not invoicing yet. You are generating an invoice proposal. This invoice proposal can be subject for review, right? Or can be automatic approved, right? So why? Because this is what it's going to go to your customer. And you have here the segregation of line amounts and indirect costing, right? So in this payment proposal, you can see the indirect cost components. If anyone wants to review it, again, everything gets just transferring from one side to another, right? And in here, at the end of the day, what I can do is I can just hit the post button to create the AR transaction and generate my invoice. I did it project by project, but there is also a functionality that allows you to generate this by all the projects that you need. Okay, so this is actually trying to post right now. And in here, if I make a refresh, you will see that my $150 is already in approved status, right? I'm going to go to the workflow. I'm going to approve it. Someone is going to approve. And my expense reports are going to start traveling from one column to another, right? Of course, calculating our indirect costing at the time it gets posted. So that's in kind of general details, right? How the cost accounting part works for the government contractor add-in from Turnkey Technologies inside D365 Finance and Operations. The last thing that probably I would like to show you in here is we talk about traceability on timesheets, right? Okay, this timesheet was posted after the Department of Defense, let's say, review this. They say, hey, there is something wrong. The rate is incorrect, right? Or he wasn't on the O'Connor site on the Saturday, right? So you need to take out 20 hours from this timesheet. Or it could be also an internal review, right? How do we make sure that that process gets correctly tracked? Okay, so we go to the timesheet, and what we do is we make something that it's called timesheet correction. Okay, the timesheet is going to be this one. I want to correct it in the same period. Yes, I leave this empty. I'm going to hit the OK button. And what this is going to do is, you see the timesheet is says 90, right? Okay, it will create one negative timesheet for the 90 hours because we will reverse the entire transaction, right? So this record has the same number of hours but negative, right? If I go to the header, it will have the same amount that we calculated before, right? And we can actually submit it, approve it, and it's going to post the negatives. And the negatives are going to come with the fringe, overhead, and G&A. So everything reverses pretty nice and smooth, right? So we don't need to have kind of human intervention. We can make all this process of the negatives to be submitted and approved automatically, right? I just don't have it set up in that way. And then I have the new one, which is going to be a draft. You can see how these two are actually making reference to the original timesheet. So, hey, this is a negative. What was the original timesheet? Oh, 4051. Perfect. I want to validate that we have the same G&A, the same fringe. We are more than welcome to do it, right? And those are going to match. So now let's go to the draft one and say, hey, you know what? The problem was one day in this date. I'm going to take out the hours. Okay, so no hours. This is going to affect the amount. So I'm going to go to 650 because I just worked one day in this project, and I'm going to do the same thing. Submission, and I will put correction of Saturday, right? So something like that. I'm going to do my submit, and basically all these are going to be in review. The negative is still in review. I'm going to come here. I'm going to approve it so it gets posted. I will have a negative posting on my project. So right now I can perform, right, a new invoicing process, and that it's actually going to give me a credit for my customer, right? Because I am taking out $650 out of their invoice or out of their AR amount, right? So that's basically how the reversals of timesheets work, right? So it's and what's the traceability whenever we have any type of this situation. The same works with expenses, and the same works with products. We have a reversal button, and then we reverse a transaction. So that being said, I would like to leave the last 5 minutes of this session in case there is any kind of question, guys. If there is any question from your side, I could be more than glad to help you with that. So thank you very much for your time, and I don't know if there's any questions out there, Zach, Michelle, during this session.
Yeah, Javier, we have a few questions. Let me pull them up really quick.
Let me just stop sharing my screen. Well, I'm going to leave it in there.
So our first one is, how would the system be used to separate allowable and unallowable costs?
Okay. How the system is going to be used to separate allow. I think you still can see my screen, right, Zach? My F&O screen?
Yep.
Okay, so how the system is going to be used to segregate allowable and unallowable cost. First thing is management of the categories. As I showed you, every type of work, every category can be set up in here where we talk about our cost component group rules, right? So if I go here and I hit new, I can come here and say, okay, so as of 1/1/21, right? This category, right, will be allowable for customer, for CR, for all the projects, right? So in this scenario, I'm doing a kind of a general setup for an allowable category regardless of project. I want this to be allowable by contract ID. Yes. I want to make this allowable by resource. I need this to be allowable by project. This is the way we set it up, right? So we can have multiple categories that are allowable at an open project, right? Or it could be by resource, by contract, or by customer. So it's a lot of flexibility, but this is the main screen where we set up the allowable and unallowable categories.
Got it.
Is there any other question?
Looks like we have another one. How would the system be used to create cost pools?
Okay, so I think we're running out of time. So the cost pools, as I told you, it's not other thing than this one. where is this? I think it's my work components. This is going to be the several different cost pools that we will have, right? So I will create a new cost pool, right? I'm going to put like a cost pool demo, right? And in here is where I will be able to say, okay, so what I am going to be charging as of 1/1/2021, this cost pool, which is specific for just one project, will have fringe, right? Okay, fringe, what is going to be the percentage? 10%. And probably I won't have G&A, but I will have overhead, right? So this is a cost pool that is going to charge 20% of overhead, right? And then I'm going to come here and put my rules. So fringe is going to be based on base amount, and overhead is going to be based on base amount and fringe, right? So in this way, I created a total different cost pool, right, than the one that I used before. The one that I used before was the CR, which includes so many other different concepts and the different invoice rates, right? And again, is once I create the cost pool, now my next step is actually to define here in the rules is which projects are going to use that one, right? So I can say as of 1/1/21, right? The project ID, and I'm going to take, I don't know, this G&A management, right? This project, it's going to take my new cost pool. Okay, so this is how we associate the behavior of the cost pool that I just created against the project without touching the other ones. Okay, so I think that's the way to do it. Hopefully that got clear, and I think we are actually getting to the end of this webinar. So we really appreciate your time, guys. If there is any other question that we need to follow up, I'm pretty sure Zach and our team we're going to go back to you and send the answers. But in the meantime, I will stop sharing my screen, and thank you all for attending.